I am 82 years old, and I have been entirely single for the last 30 years, even though my wife sleeps exactly 3 feet away from me every single night. People think divorce is the ugliest, most painful thing that can happen to a marriage. It isn't. I promise you, it isn't. I will tell you what is infinitely worse. It is staying. It is sleeping on one side of a massive king-size bed, staring at a second pillow that is always untouched, always perfect, always cold. It sits there like a plush white gravestone right next to my head every single night for decades. Sometimes when the house is entirely dark, I reach out my hand just to see if the cotton fabric is warm. It never is. The heat left this bed a long, long time ago. We never divorced. We never signed a single paper. We never screamed at each other in the driveway. We never threw plates at the kitchen wall or packed suitcases in the middle of the night. We just faded. And let me tell you, as a man who is standing at the end of his life, fading is 1,000 times worse than an explosion. You think loneliness is being single? You think it's swiping on an app or eating dinner alone at a diner? Try lying next to a woman for 30 years who looks right through you like you are a piece of living room furniture. The smell of her lavender shampoo still fills this bedroom every evening. It hangs in the air, sweet and heavy, wrapping around me while I stare at the ceiling. She breathes in rhythm with the ticking of the hallway clock, but she might as well be a ghost. I might as well be a ghost. I didn't understand it at the time, but this is exactly how a life disappears. Not all at once, but inch by silent inch. When did I become optional in my own life? Nobody tells you this, but the quietest houses hold the most deafening tragedies. For the longest time I believed a lie, a very comfortable, very dangerous, very masculine lie. I believed marriage was about staying. I thought it was an endurance sport. My father told me, as long as you keep a roof over her head and food on the table, you are a good husband. He was a fool, and I was a bigger fool for believing him. I paid the mortgage. I fixed the leaky faucet in the downstairs bathroom. I mowed the front lawn every Saturday morning. I thought that was enough. I thought as long as we weren't actively fighting, we were winning. I would come home from work. My boots would be heavy, my joints would ache. I'd walk through the front door, take off my coat, and she would smile. A polite, thin, completely empty little smile. The exact kind of smile you give a stranger in an elevator when you just want the doors to close. We would eat dinner in complete, comfortable silence. The only sound in the entire house was the metallic clinking of our forks against the porcelain plates. Clink, clink, scrape. I actually convinced myself that was maturity. I sat there chewing my food, looking at her, and I told myself, this is what getting older is. This is success. No drama, no chaos, just peace. What an absolute joke. I was arrogant. I was so proud of the quiet that I ignored how she completely stopped asking about my day. I ignored how I completely stopped trying to make her laugh. We became 2 co-workers managing a company called Our Household. I remember this one time, maybe 25 years ago. I bought her flowers on a random Thursday afternoon. Just walked into the grocery store, saw some yellow tulips under those harsh fluorescent lights and thought, why not? Let's spice things up. I felt like an absolute hero walking up the driveway. I puffed my chest out. I walked into the kitchen, the plastic wrapper crinkling in my hands, and I handed them to her. She took them. She looked at the bright plastic wrapping. Then she looked at my face. She said, "Thanks." Her voice was entirely flat, hollow. Then she turned her back to me, ran the tap water in the sink, and shoved them into a cheap glass vase we got as a wedding gift. She handled them like I had just handed her a bag of damp soil, like I was a delivery boy dropping off the morning mail. And you know what I did? I laughed it off. I literally chuckled in the kitchen, grabbed a cold beer from the fridge, and went to sit in my armchair. I thought I was Don Juan, but I was just a ghost delivering botany. I thought it was just a quirky moment, a funny little miscommunication between old-timers. A red flag? No. I called it peace. I called it a stable marriage. I thought I had time. I always thought I had time to fix the quiet. But you never have as much time as you think. That's the sickest trick life plays on you. It makes you think tomorrow is a guarantee, so you waste today being a coward. Because that's what I was. I was a coward. I was terrified to ask her why she didn't look me in the eyes anymore. I was terrified of the answer. So I chose the silence. It was easier to drown quietly than to thrash around and ask for a lifeline. But there was a moment, a very specific, agonizing moment, when everything quietly, officially ended. It was a Tuesday night. It is always a Tuesday, isn't it? Nothing special about it. It was raining outside, a slow, steady drizzle. I could hear the water hitting the window pane, tapping like tiny fingernails against the glass. She was reading on her side of the bed. The little brass reading lamp was switched on, casting this harsh yellow cone of light across her white blankets. The rest of the room was swallowed in shadows. The house was entirely still. The only sound was the low, vibrating hum of the refrigerator kicking on in the kitchen downstairs, a steady drone trembling in the floorboards. I was lying flat on my back, staring up at the ceiling fan. The blades weren't moving. I felt this sudden, desperate, suffocating urge just to connect, just to know I was alive. I felt like I was floating away in outer space, and I needed a tether. So I reached over. The sheets rustled. My shoulder popped. Getting old is pathetic, let me tell you. My lower back was throbbing that night, but I forced my arm across the great cold divide of our mattress. I found her hand. It was resting on top of the covers, right next to the cracked spine of her paperback book. I placed my warm hand directly on top of hers, and I waited. I waited for her to interlock her fingers with mine. I waited for her to squeeze my palm. I waited for her to yank her hand away. If she had pulled away in disgust, at least it would have meant something. It would have meant she felt me. It would have meant I had a physical impact on her reality. Rejection is active. It proves you exist. But she didn't pull away. She didn't do anything. She just didn't feel it. Her eyes stayed glued to the page of her book. She didn't flinch. Her breathing didn't change. She didn't turn her head even a fraction of an inch. Then she reached up with her other hand and slowly turned the page. The paper made a dry, crisp sound in the quiet room. It was like a cinder block hitting me directly in the chest, like I wasn't there, like my hand was made of thin air, like my skin had no weight, no temperature, no meaning. The room smelled intensely of her coconut hand lotion, sweet, artificial, suffocating coconut. I can still smell it in my nightmares. The television murmured something unintelligible from the living room directly below us, and in that crushing silence, with my heavy hand resting on hers like a dead weight, it hit me. I hadn't just lost my wife, I had completely erased myself. I had been practicing invisibility for years, and I had finally mastered it. She didn't leave me. She didn't pack a bag. She didn't call a lawyer. I did this to myself. I taught her that I didn't need to be seen. I trained her day by day, year by year, to ignore my presence. I built my own solitary confinement cell, locked the heavy iron door from the inside, and then sat on the floor, wondering why nobody ever came to visit me. I slowly pulled my hand back. The sheets rustled again. I rolled over. I faced the dark, empty wall. I always thought I had time. I wept that night, not loud enough for her to hear, of course, never loud enough to disturb the peace, just quiet, pathetic, hot tears soaking right into my pillowcase, because realizing you no longer exist to the one person you promised your life to is a pain that does not have a name in the human dictionary. Now, I am an 82-year-old man. My hands shake, my knees ache with the weather, and I sleep entirely alone in that exact same bed. Divorced? No. I already told you, she still lives here. We are just roommates who happen to share a rotting marriage certificate filed away in a drawer downstairs. Every single morning I wake up, my chest feels tight. The air in the house is stale. I swing my legs out of bed, and out of sheer, blinding, unbreakable habit, I smooth out the blankets on both sides. I pull the heavy comforter up. I fluff my pillow. Then I look at her pillow, the cold one, the untouched one. It sits there mocking me, a pristine monument to my utter failure as a man. I go downstairs. The wooden steps groan violently under my weight. The whole house sounds tired. I walk into the kitchen. I make coffee. The machine gurgles and spits and hisses. The dark, bitter smell of roasted beans fills the room. And sometimes I catch myself talking, out loud, to the air. I narrate the morning process. I say, "All right, let's put the paper filter in. 2 scoops today, maybe 3. Looks like it's going to rain again. Going to be a long day." I talk like I'm hosting a morning television show for a totally empty room. I do it just to hear a human voice, just to prove to myself that I still have vocal cords, just to vibrate the air in the kitchen so I know I'm not entirely dead yet. Last week I was sitting in my leather armchair in the living room. The leather is cracked and peeling on the armrests. I was looking at something on my phone, a video of a dog, or maybe one of my grandkids doing something ridiculous. I don't even remember what it was, but I laughed. A real, loud, sudden laugh. The sound tore out of my dry throat, and it felt so profoundly foreign, so aggressively strange, that I stopped mid-breath. I literally choked on my own laughter, because the sound hit the bare walls of the living room and just immediately died. The room swallowed my joy whole. The silence that followed was so thick, so heavy, it felt like water filling my lungs. It was 10 times louder than the laugh itself. I looked around the empty room, looking at the dust motes floating in the gray sunbeams shining through the blinds, and I realized exactly what I had become. I have become an echo in my own life, Nobody tells you this when you are young and arrogant, but the heaviest thing in the entire world isn't grief. Grief passes. The heaviest thing in the world is an empty space that you are still guarding. So, listen to me. I don't care how old you are. I don't care if you've been married for 2 years or 20. I don't care how exhausted you are from your job or how stressed you are about your mortgage. Listen to an old ghost who has absolutely nothing left to lose by telling you the truth. You can lose someone entirely while they are still sitting in the exact same room as you. Stop thinking that physical presence equals connection. It is a lie. A mannequin has physical presence. A floor lamp has physical presence. When was the last time you actually looked at your partner? I don't mean a passing glance across the kitchen island while you chew your dry toast. I don't mean making brief eye contact while you ask who is picking up the kids from soccer practice. I mean really looked at the new lines forming around their eyes, looked at the way their shoulders slump when they think nobody is watching them, looked at the exhaustion hiding behind their polite smile. When did you last ask a question that you didn't already know the answer to? When did you last ask something that actually required them to pause, to think, to feel, to open up their chest and show you what is beating inside? Loneliness does not announce itself with a marching band. It doesn't kick the front door off its hinges. It creeps in. It slips through the invisible cracks of quiet nights and polite distance. It disguises itself as routine, as comfort, as being mature and settled. Do you think you are safe right now just because she didn't yell at you today? Do you think your marriage is rock solid because you sit on the same couch and watch the exact same Netflix show in dead silence every Friday night? You are walking on thin ice, and you are too deaf to hear it cracking under your boots. Don't wait until you are 82 years old, lying next to a cold, perfectly fluffed white pillow, wondering exactly what year you became a stranger in your own house. Don't wait until your own voice sounds weird to your own ears because you haven't used it to say anything real in a decade. I am telling you this brutal, uncomfortable truth because someone has to shake you awake. Invisibility is a choice. It is a choice you make every single day you decide to stay silent to keep the peace. It is a choice you make every time you look down at the glowing screen of your phone instead of looking up at her face. It is a choice you make every single time you swallow a compliment, or choke back a question, or refuse to give an apology, simply because you are too lazy or too damn proud to say the words out loud. I chose it. For 30 years I chose the quiet, and now I get to die with it. You still have time, but you don't have nearly as much as you think you do. Stop disappearing into your own life. Stop choosing it.